Ah, you've arrived right on time. Kill Herbert smiled at me, reaching out with his free arm to gesture me inside of his extravagant home. He used his body to hold the doorway open, and I stepped inside. Thanking him, his face was still quite as pale as when we had first met, but there was an energy to him that made him look well as one could be after having survived an attempt on their life. "Thank you, Mr. Herbert," I replied, taking a grandeur of his estate. Cale Herbert was one of the city's finest artists, known for painting fantastic works for display at the local museum. The slow but steady pace he had released his new works kept the attention of the masses. Perhaps it also helped that the other artists in the area were just too frightened to even dare to try. Many collectors tried to buy off his pieces, but he only let a select number leave his grasp from time to time to make ends meet. He claimed that he always put together a part of his soul into every piece, and that he had no soul left as he had sold them all off. I believe it. It was the way he used to color and brush strokes a glorious detail. There was an unimaginable amount of love and effort put into everything he did. Still, I couldn't help but wished he had painted the picture for me to keep too. As a fan of his work, I am immensely excited for having the opportunity to interview him tonight. Dinner is just about ready. You'll have to forgive me for not having it done sooner, Cale stated, before closing the large wooden door behind me. Oh, it's really no trouble. I'm surprised as you were still willing to cook in the first place. What with your injury and all? My eyes drifted from his face down to his forearm, wrapped in a bandage cradle in a sling. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the blood stain on it. Cale must have noticed my face. Ah, that's just paint. I was doing a quick landscape before you arrived. Care to see it? My answer was obvious. Cale chuckled slightly, and then motioned for me to follow. We walked into the corridor, passing many murals and landscapes that I've never seen before. Exquisite hues and techniques filled my eyes, and I had to keep myself from simply standing still and letting them swallow me in their words. The subjects and themes of these works were all still similar to those Cale would put on a public display. Mostly people in their day-to-day struggles, usually exaggerated with the iconic Nick sentiments, much such as a man carving a chunk of his own flesh within his run-down house, a pile of bills stained with his blood, and his family watching him from another room. Another painting depicted a woman screaming in agony while every joint in her and her arms were being popped apart, deforming her. She was holding on to something on both sides, slowly being dragged away into the darkness of the painting. In one hand, dollar bills scratched in the inside of her fist and let the crimson river pour from them. In her other, her fingers dug into the loaf of the artisan bread, just about ready to break off from her. It was gritty depiction and her familiar pain of those average difficulties that really enraptured his audience, myself among them. Soon after, Cale had led me into a separate room. It was a bit darker with the lights off, and most of the windows were blocked by curtains or Bristol board. The only source of light that came from were two open doorways, the one we entered from, and the other one where the smell of dinner sourced from, and a single large window that gave me a wonderful view of the sun setting over the ocean. The paintings in this room were all landscapes. Not a single person could be seen on any of them, allowing one to appreciate the splendor of the environments instead. The room had a very odd smell to it, something like an artificial earthiness. On one easel by the open window, there was one such painting. It was magnificent recreation of the current sunset. The reeds and the oranges, the tints, and the white of the sun that cut through brilliantly. The ocean was unfinished, but deep navy blue strokes that were on the canvas still looked nice. It's the oil paints, Cale remarked. He must have noticed my upturned nose. You'll get used to the strength eventually. Why is it so dark in here, though? I was just seeing how it felt. Just using the light from the setting sun to paint this image was quite relaxing. I kept down a chuckle and just nodded, then followed him through the other door. It led me to the kitchen as expected, which doubled as a dining room, with a massive glass wall overlooking the ocean at its cliffside. Kale invited me to take a seat in the dining table near the studio entrance and joined me from the other side of the table. The plates were set and neat, with a bottle of wine waiting on the end. "Mr. Herbert," I said, "would it be all right if I start with a few questions if we're waiting?" He shook his head and gestured with his free hand. "By all means, go ahead." "Thank you." I reached into my purse and pulled out a notepad. "So you know why I'm mainly here. What is your experience with the blood artist like, if it's not too painful to go through?" Kale shook his head again. "I reassure you, as the only current survivor, I am willing to share whatever I can to help out. You can ask me absolutely anything. Well, now let's see. I suppose he seemed to come after you had done the first few pieces of meat on me, Miss Jacobs. Must have been the attention that drew. Same as the rest of them, all right?" I nodded. "That does seem to be the pattern. All four of the other victims are getting the spotlight very quickly, too. Then why did you keep going? If you knew it would put you at risk." He shrugged. "Because I wasn't appropriately scared, I supposed. Because I didn't think it would happen to me, but it did." "Right you are. After painting so many problems and basking in their feelings, getting used to the pain every day, it didn't seem like this criminal was a threat. I was concerned sure it might happen again, but I also couldn't just leave my audience hung and dry, and the house doesn't pay for itself." He gestured upwards towards the ceiling with a laugh, and I joined him in agreement. A villa overlooking the ocean, secluded from the rot and stink of the noise of the city, was not a cheap thing. Kale sighed and slumped into the chair a bit. "So there I was, in a hotel hot tub. The Goodwill, right?" "Yep, that's the one I stayed in. I was doing a trip around the state, around some other reason why I thought it was safe. All the other kills had happened in the city. Anyway, so I'm getting out of the tub, and I hear the door to the pool open. I just turned to see who it was. It was pretty late, and—" Kale's paused for a moment, trying to describe his attacker. "He was dressed fairly normal for an artist, a button-up plaid jeans, absolutely covered in paint stains. It was the mask that made me realize, oh shit, I'm in trouble." I traced around the air with my face with my pen, breaking from writing for a moment. Those drama masks, yeah? Yeah, the frowning feeder mask." I paused on my own writing. A frowning mask. All of the others were attacked by a smiling man. "Well, that's just it. See, my theory is that there's two of them. That explains how this one found me so quick." Kale shrugged again, raising an eyebrow at it as well. "I could see that. The murderers seemed too well coordinated for it to be one person." I flicked through the page in my notepad and continued. "So what happened when you saw him?" Kale reached down with his left hand to pull up the side of his shirt, revealing another bandage on his left side abdomen. "The bastard struck me. I think it was a palette knife. Definitely sharper than it needed to be. I could tell you that much now. It went in easy, since I was still wet and relaxed from the hot water. So I fell down to the floor, and he got on top of me." Kale shivered, his eyes closing for a moment. "Mr. Herbert, we could stop if you like." He opened his eyes slowly, looking towards the floor blankly. "That's when he pinned me. He took the knife on my arm, and very slowly, god damn, it felt like I could feel every single skin fiber getting plucked apart, and every second one stung. The blood started pouring, and of course he had a bucket to start collecting." "Did no one see this going on?" "No, like I said, it was late, so there wasn't anyone else around. I tried fighting back with my free arm, but he just jabbed me in the nose." Eyes teared up, blood pouring from there now. "I'm dizzy, and he kept hitting me if I moved. I remember." Kale scratched his hair there and bit his lip. He brought the knife towards my nether regions at one point. but he didn't do anything there. Why did you think he did that? Probably just to get my heart racing more, to scare me, get more blood pumping, bleed me faster. If that's for the reason it worked. He leaned back, resting his head on top of the chair while looking upwards again. I remember getting tired, and I could barely keep my eyes open. Eventually I blacked out, and the next thing I remember was being in the hospital. I nodded slowly. All right then. What is your opinion on his methods? Why do you think they'd be doing this a way they are? Going around and draining other artists of their blood. It seems ineffective. Well, he seems to get massively jealous of any uprising artists. Perhaps he's trying to upstage them. Upstage them? How? His methods are probably excessive on purpose. It's an act. This is his own show, at least in his eyes, and he thinks it's the greatest exhibit on Earth. I tapped my pen on the pad. The admiration in Cale's voice was just odd, but my anxiety only flourished when he stared at me with those dilated pupils. I coughed to clear my throat, trying to think of the next question. So what does that has to do with the blood then? There is always a lot on the scene, but most of it, that's the mystery of it. The excitement that comes from his murders. Why did he do it? Where did the blood go? That's the thrill of the entitles your column readers, isn't it, Emily? Cale was leaning over the front of the table now, his bandaged arm beneath him. My suspicions towards Cale were growing even more dense. While he may have just had some strange fascination with his murderer, considering the tastes of his work were rather in the dark in their own respect, I couldn't help but wonder if there was another reason, and if my hunches were correct, there was a situation I had to get myself out of quickly. Biting my lip, I tried another question. Did the idea ever come across your mind that this person may have been a copycat? Cale rested both elbows on the table and clasped his hands together. Of course, someone else might have gotten the taste of blood of an artist's work. My attacker was definitely a copycat. They could never get it precisely right if they tried. And why would that be? Because you can't imitate a perfection. A silence was born after that, and quickly grew into its uncomfortable adolescence. I slowly copied down his words, trying to avoid making eye contact with the frightening man. I scratched down the notes, or at least pretended to, and flipped through my book, attempting to find another question to break the eerie quiet. The abrasive ringing in the oven did so for me, signaling that dinner was ready. As Cale stood up to get it out, I followed, clearing my throat. Would it be all right if I used your restroom before we eat? Cale smiled softly and nodded, before pointing to the dining room's main entrance. Certainly, second door on the left. I nodded to thank him, and then quickly shuffled past him, my purse and notepad in tow. The door was open to the main hall, forcing me to pass by some paintings as before. Only now, instead of feeling just dark and surreal fascination by Cale's works, I was disturbed and uneasy. It wasn't hard to imagine the subjects of his portraits being his victims. I began to make a haste for the front door. Then I noticed that the door was still open a bit. His studio, though, it made me sick to admit it. I did wanted to see his art one last time, if he was to be arrested after I made this report to the police. Otherwise, I may never get that feeling again, regardless of the emotions accompanied it now. I stepped inside slowly, unable to make out much of what was visible before. The sun had set during our conversation, and so it was nearly impossible to make out the paintings distinctively. Feeling on the wall, I felt a light switch gave it a flip. My heart caught in my throat as it skipped several beats. Impulsively, I covered my mouth to keep it from escaping. Paint cans sat on the floor with crimson drip lines running down their sides. Some were filled to the brim, others laid on their sides, the blood caramelized and crusty. A scream was finally able to escape my lips when I felt another hand clasp on my own, and a sharp kitchen knife driving itself into my back. I struggled to escape the artist's grasp before my life fluid more from my body and my consciousness quickly disoriented. I wanted my last sight to be of his art, to be something beautiful, but all the paintings in this room were brown, even the sunset. What's up, my pretties? it's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.